Started? Yeah.
Okay, and welcome everyone, and good evening again. Today we've had the pleasure to invite Professor Dr. Eda Üstünel of Muğla University in Muğla, Turkey. And we are gathered here to talk about the article which was written 16 years ago called Why That in That Language Right Now. But before we actually start, I'm going to introduce Eda, and before I hand over the floor to her, Eda is the director of School of Foreign Languages at Muğla University, and she currently works and writes about translanguaging, conversation analysis, code switching, and she has her PhD from Newcastle University. Before that, she did her master's from Lancaster University, and she has been writing about code switching, both of learners as well as teachers code switching in the Turkish context. And she has examined and written about code switching from by using different kinds of methodologies like discourse analysis, conversation analysis, mixed methods, as well as quantitative research methods. While she'll be focusing on her 2005 article, so I won't go into much detail about her other research at this point, but we know that her study and her research has been one of the pioneering studies in the context of English language classrooms, as well as teacher-initiated language policing from a conversation analytic framework or point of view. And before we move on to reading the article with Eda, I would just like to briefly summarize what code switching research is about. It's kind of a reminder that the current form of conversation analytic code switching is based on several decades research in the bilingual talk. And it's not just conversation analytic framework that has been beneficial in terms of code switching and bilingual talk, but studies from the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, for instance, the first time the word code switching was used in 1954 by Hans Vogt, and the book Language in Contact has been a pioneering work from that period. And based on that, Peter Auer used the organizational framework to investigate code switching. Now, without boring you much about these things which actually excite me a lot about bilingual talk, so I will hand over the floor to Eda to walk us through her article, Why That in That Language Right Now. Eda, over to you.
Thank you very much, Alia. And thank you very much for your invitation, both Alia and Rizwan, for tonight's reading session. I'm very happy to be here, and also I'm very excited to meet with our audience. I had the chance to have a small talk with the audience before the recording. So they are coming from various countries in the world. So I'm very happy to approach to many countries, researchers from many countries, actually. So now it has been 16 years. It's quite surprising, quite long time since I did my PhD at Newcastle University in the UK with my PhD supervisor, Professor Dr. Paul Seathouse. And I'm giving my regards to him if he's going to watch this video later on YouTube. And he walked me to CA to conversation analysis methodology during my courses. I did integrated PhD course, by the way. So I took lectures for 2 years, and he introduced me to the methodology of CA, and since then I'm a fan of CA research. And at that time, 16 years before, I was interested in code switching in EFL classrooms. So that would be institutional talk. I'm going to define it later on. And it was my interest because I was very eager to know when teachers code switch to mother tongue, which is in my case Turkish, and when they switch back to English during lessons. So that was my interest, and I did my PhD on that. Here you see the title, Why That in That Language Right Now. That's a typical questioning. If you carry out conversation analysis methodology, you are both interested in the reasons of doing acts, and if you are doing code switching research, then you are interested why you use that particular language. And also, if you are doing again CA research, you are interested, then you are automatically interested in why right now you are using that language. So we framed the title based on the known research question, and I think it appealed to the readers since then. So this is my email address if you want to comment on this presentation or ask me any questions or suggest me any references. You may contact me anytime. So in order to frame this reading session, I typed some slides for you, not to limit the discussion, but just to frame the discussion. So we can discuss on these according to these objectives, if you wish. Firstly, my objective in this presentation is that we can identify code switching sequences from an organizational perspective. Here, organization means classroom, so it will be institutional based perspective. And secondly, I hope we will be able to describe teachers' different ways of code switching. As I mentioned in my PhD thesis, I focused on teachers' code switching only. But in my book, I also included learners' code switching. The data for that came from one of my master's degree students' data, and she nicely accepted me to use her data in the book. So personally, I haven't carried out any research on learners' code switching, but I did on teachers' code switching. So by the end of this presentation, I hope you can identify different uses of teachers' code switching patterns. And the key questions, as I said, we are not limited to these, but we can, base our discussion on these two questions if you wish. The first one is, how can the sequential framework be used to analyze bilingual classroom conversations? Here, of course, our data come from Turkish context. So bilingual here means Turkish and English language use. So how can the sequential framework can be used to analyze such talk? And secondly, what kind of prosodic elements can be used as evidence of marking different categories of code switching from a CA perspective? In the data that I'm going to show you in a minute, you will see some prosodic elements in the analysis, in the transcription, let's say, and we are going to discuss how those prosodic elements will define or categorize code switching in CA perspective. And this is one of our base readings, as you may read in the email that Alia and Rizwan sent to you before. Gafaranga and Torras, they wrote an article in 2002, and they nicely summarized the literature on code switching, starting from Peter Auer's definition till the use of it in classroom. And the article is named as Interactional Otherness towards the redefinition of code switching. Here, I take their chart, but I couldn't draw the chart. Unfortunately, I'm not good at technology, but let me explain you what I mean by the numbers and letters. So if you want to read, you may go back to their article on page 19, you will see the proper chart. So they have the title of language alternation, and they divided it into two sections. The first section is language alternation itself as the medium, and the other division is language alternation as deviance. In the second one, deviance is, as CA researchers, we try to focus on deviant cases. So they name this category out of it. And for the second category, they make further divisions. The first division is under language alternation as deviance, medium repair, and interactional otherness. And then they further divide international otherness into two, medium switching and medium suspension. And for the last two terms, which are medium switching and medium suspension, they name them in general as code switching. I guess you all read the article, so I don't want to go in details. Shall I go in details? I don't know what to do. But this is the framework that I want to use in my analysis further on. So if you are familiar with the article, you will see that they use language alternation as the umbrella term and code switching within that umbrella term as one term. And as I said, for the last two terms, they use it in general as code switching. So in short, when we define code switching, when we redefine code switching, according to them, we focus on deviant cases, how we move away from norms that then we have deviance in conversation. So this was the first base reading, which I like this article also a lot. The second base reading was my book, which was published in 2016, I guess. And we focused on chapter 2 only. There are 5 chapters in total. And here, how I define code switching. I want to refer to my definition, which is very close to Gafaranga's and Torras definitions as well. And code switching in EFL classrooms. In the book, in this chapter, I discussed it extensively, and I refer to monolingual approach versus bilingual approach. Some researchers are for monolingual use in ELT classrooms or EFL classrooms, and some researchers are for bilingual use, or the use of 2 languages, the native language and the target language, in this case, English, in EFL classrooms. So I discussed extensively. If you want to read, you may go to that chapter if you wish. And then, of course, when we think of code switching, we try to base, Paul Seatas and I, we try to base our discussion on a theory. And the most relevant theory we found at that time was the socio-cultural theory, and we try to link this theory to code switching. And when we did research on this, we came up with the two terms, which are terms related to socio-cultural theory. ZPD, which is Vygotsky's term, as you know, zone of proximal development, and also Brenner's term of scaffolding. In my research and also in my article and the book, I referred very much to those two terms because I base my discussion on those two terms, which belong to the socio-cultural theory. And lastly, in the chapter, you can see different functions of code switching. Teacher code switching data come from my research, my PhD, and learner code switching data came from my master's degree students' master's degree research. So I try to combine, show you the similarities and differences between the functions of teacher code switching patterns and learner code switching patterns in the chapter. For this presentation, my focus is on just teacher code switching patterns, but you may read on your own time if you wish. And then the last, I think, base reading for this reading session was my article with my PhD supervisor, Paul Seathouse, in 2005, which was the year I finished my PhD. So in this article, we focused on code switching and pedagogical focus. Basically, very shortly, we discussed how code switching patterns differ according to the pedagogical focus of the lesson. So that was, in a sentence, a very brief summary of the research we did. In this article and also in my PhD pieces, I introduced one terminology to the field, which is called teacher-induced code switching. And teacher-initiated code switching, as the term has been already in use. So I introduced the first one. I defined it very clearly, the differences between teacher-induced and teacher-initiated in my article and also in my PhD thesis. And now I'm going to give you some examples, 2 examples from teacher-induced code switching and 2 classroom extracts or examples for teacher-initiated code switching, so that we can discuss the differences, how they differ according to organizational pattern in dialogue, let me say. So these are our base readings and base terminology that we are going to use in this reading session. I don't know if I need to talk more on the reading materials. That's all what I wanted to say in a brief summary.
I think we can skip this and go directly to the data.
Okay. Now I'm going to introduce you 4 different extracts which were taken from my PhD thesis and which were also used in the article. In the article, we used 8 extracts, but for tonight's presentation, I chose just 4 because I think they are good examples of teacher-induced code switching and teacher-initiated code switching, so that you can see the difference and we can discuss the difference. The first extract, the data sampling information or background information, let me say, all the extracts were taken from a state university in Turkey, in Izmir. By state university, I mean in Turkey, we say state university for universities which are government funded. So they are not private institutions, but they are government funded state universities. And the data was collected from one of them, from School of Foreign Languages. The context is EFL classroom context. All the students are Turkish originally, and the teacher is also Turkish, but they were, learning and teaching English. So the practice was carried out in English, or the pedagogical, or let me say, institutional aim is so, but the reality is different. The activity now we are going to see is a teacher-fronted whole class discussion about the New Year celebration. So the timing is perfect to discuss this extract. I wish you all the best in the new year, by the way. And number of students included in the data were 11 students, so small group. And classroom time was 50 minutes, so we call it 1 class hour or lesson time. So this is the background information. And the extract is this. As I said, it's taken from the article, our joint article with my supervisor on page 313. If you want to follow, you may have a look. And in the article, also in my PhD thesis, I try to name each extract. So the name of this extract is Teacher-Initiated Code Switching, Dealing with a Lack of Response in the Second Language or Target Language, or English, in other words. So there are 11 lines here. T stands for teacher. S for example, in line 8 stands for student 4, because I couldn't use real names, for ethical purpose. I numbered students. So let me read the extract for you. And before reading, shall I ask the audience, Alia, which one they prefer? I came up with 2 suggestions for you, dear audience. Do you want me to analyze this extract by line, or before my analysis, do you want to do the analysis, and then I will give my analysis? So there are 2 options. Either I present and do the analysis by myself, which I wouldn't prefer because it would be a monologue in that way, or I read the extract and give some explanations, and then any volunteer or volunteers would do the analysis. Then we will have more interactive fashion in this presentation. Whichever will you choose, you may type on chat box, and Alia is going to collect.
And I was wondering if everyone is familiar with CA kind of research as well, or not. So whether you are familiar with CA or not, maybe it would be fun, actually, if you're not familiar with CA, to try analyzing with Eda. What do you think, Eda?
Yeah, David wrote that maybe Eda talk us through the first one and we try a later one. Yeah, that's a good option. Yes, thank you, David.
Okay, yeah, let's do this then.
Okay, let's do that, and we'll see how we go on next. Yeah, so in line 1, teacher takes the turn and is with a discourse marker, okay? And in parentheses, if there is a dot, then that means it's a micro pause. Without counting, I just used a dot, or in order to refer to a micro pause. You see inhalation here and a question in a rise tone on Tuesday night. And in line 2, we have a pause for half a second. And in line 3, the teacher continues with the turn on New Year's night. So here we see kind of paraphrasing. In line 1, she or he, the teacher, asked the question Tuesday night. Then in line 3, she or he prefaced it to make it more obvious to the learners, because there was no answer in line 2. So she or he defined it as New Year's night. And in line 4, we have again a pause for a second. And then we see in line 5, teacher, in this time, using, again paraphrasing the same question, on Tuesday, micropause, last Tuesday. And then in line 6, we have 2 seconds of pause. And then we have an arrow. An arrow in the extract means that we have the incidence of code switching. So the teacher code switched to Turkish, which is the shared mother tongue in the classroom. Salı günü, again with a rise intonation. Salı günü means on Tuesday. And then in line 8, after teacher's code switch turn, we have the initiation of a reply from student 4. We have small pause, then we have in line 9 hesitation. We can see the initiation, but not a proper sentence or a phrase. And then in line 10, the teacher again paraphrases the question, the same question in line 3 into Turkish. Yılbaşı gecesi, which means on New Year's Eve. And in line 11, we see again student 4's turn, but this time a reply, a proper reply or an expected reply to the question. I, 2 seconds pause, study, half a second pause, English. So student 4 studied English on New Year's night, which shows a perfect student, I guess. So that would be my analysis, and let me read it in more technical terms for you. This is the writing taken from the article. Let me minimize my screen. Okay. So this is the proper analysis with technical terms. Extract 1 is taken from a longer teacher-learner dialogue in which the teacher asks the learner what she did on New Year's Eve. So student 4 is she. In line 1, the teacher directs a question to student 4 in English, but that does not receive a reply after a pause of half a second. In line 3, the teacher rephrases the question and waits for a slightly longer time, this time 1 second, for a reply. As the learner still does not answer, the teacher repeats the initial question with minor changes in line 5. After a further pause of 2 seconds without a reply, the teacher code switches to Turkish and repeats the 2 phrasing of the question in lines 7 and 10. This pattern is found elsewhere in the data, in my PhD data, revealing that the teacher code switches into L1 or the mother tongue to repeat a question after a pause of more than a second. So this was a repetitive, recurring incidence in my data. The repetition of a question signals trouble in the interaction that prevents the institutional business or institutional goal from proceeding. We can observe the pauses lengthening in lines 2, 4, and 6, after which the code switching pattern occurs. So this was the technical analysis, let me say, with some terminology inside. And this is an example of teacher-initiated code switching. Yeah. So I think it's better if I continue with teacher-induced code switching so that you can see the differences. The extract 3 is taken again from the same university, from the same school, but different classroom. Here the activity is travel agent tourist. So they are kind of doing role play activity One person acts as a travel agent and the other person acts as a tourist in this activity. They are working in pairs here. Number of students, 12 students, and class time again 50 minutes. And if you want to follow the extract, you may go on page 315. The name of this extract is Teacher-Induced Code Switching to get learners to translate into the first language. I'm sorry, it's a bit long, 21 lines in total. So the font is smaller, but I will read. So in line 1, the teacher takes the turn. Ayvalık here. Ayvalık is the name of a, how can I say, holiday resort in Turkey. So it's a proper name. That's why it's in Turkish. Ayvalık here too. And we have a pause. Sorry, two should go, shouldn't be there. Should go down. So 20, again, we have pause. 20, we have half a second pause in line 6. And in line 7, 20, good persuaders. So they are doing role play activity, the students, and the teacher is, commenting on their performance. In line 8, student 5, thank you. In line 9, teacher, persuade. And in line 10, we have half a second pause. In line 11, again, the teacher keeps the turn and paraphrases the question. What was persuade? In line 12, student 5, the same student, provides the Turkish equivalent, ikna etmek. That's the Turkish equivalence of to persuade. And in line 13, teacher, good, gives a feedback, positive confirmation. Cell of people, okay, wonderful. This time, go back to your original partner. In line 15, we have half a second pause. 16, original. In line 17, student 2, another student, provides the Turkish equivalence to original, gerçek. In line 18, student 5, ilk. This, you see the equation marks before words. That means they are overlapping. They give the Turkish equivalence at the same time. Student 2, gerçek. Student 5, ilk. Student 7, orijinal. And in line 20, the teacher takes the turn and we see an arrow. That means we have the code switching incidence here in this line. Yeah, again, positive reinforcement or feedback or confirmation. İlk partnerinize geri dönüyorsunuz. Beraber yazdınız. In English, return. She's giving an instruction, task instruction here. Return to your first partner with whom you have written. Written means the script of the role play. And in line 11, we see learners. LL means learners talk in English in groups. And we have 7 minutes of such talking, which I haven't used here. So that was an extract. This is different in the sense that here the teacher induced code switching, or induced means forced code switching from learners. Let me read the analysis, proper analysis for you. It's a bit longer this time. Extract 3 is taken from a post-task activity. The main activity is a role-play activity, and this time this is a post-task activity, kind of evaluation of the main activity. In lines 1 and between lines 1 and 7, the teacher comments on the task results. In lines 9, 11, and 16, the teacher initiates question turns that induce the learners to code switch, but she or the teacher does not code switch to Turkish herself. Why? Because she wants the students to code switch to Turkish. In line 12, student 5 switches to the Turkish or L1 to provide a translation of the L1, L2 word. And in line 17, 18, and 19, 3 different learners provide translations in the L1 of the L2 word original. Sorry. These student turns display the learner's analysis of the teacher's pedagogical focus as being for them to code switch into the L1. So here, the students interpret the questioning or teacher-induced code switching as the main pedagogical focus, and they align with teacher's pedagogical focus, and they use Turkish to give the equivalence. The teacher's follow-up turn in lines 13 and 20 provides positive feedback. She affirmed the answers, which confirms that the learners had compiled with pedagogical focus, or in other words, they align with the pedagogical focus. The data, I mean my PhD data, contain many such examples, and this phenomenon is virtually the reverse of extract 1, in this extract here, teacher's utterance in the L2 has the pedagogical aim of the learners producing an utterance in the L1. So the pedagogical focus was different from extract 1. In extract 3, or in this extract, the learners display affiliation. They show their alignment to teacher's pedagogical focus precisely or exactly by replying in the L1. And the teacher recognizes these as affiliative or preferred or aligned responses. So by comparing, if we compare extract 3 with extract 1, we can see, or I hope that you can see, that it's not only possible to understand and analyze code switching in L2 classrooms or in EFL classrooms by just tracing how language choice relates to developments in sequence and the shifting of pedagogical focus. So what I mean is that we can analyze and understand code switching in EFL classrooms if we trace how sequences are developed according to how pedagogical focus shifts. So we need to analyze both of them in combination. And CA as the methodology allows us to do that, because as you can see in our transcripts, which is different than discourse analysis transcripts, you can see pausing, you can see overlapping speech, and we can see rising intonation shown by a question mark, but you may not see a question mark even if it is intended to be a question in some cases. And you can see inhaling, exhaling, we still type, and in double parentheses you can see, for example, in the last line, you can see non-linguistic information here. So that we believe, I believe, and we believe that the strength of CA research. Yeah, so these are, as I said, these are taken from the article. And my another example of teacher-induced, again, or teacher-forced code switching. If you want to follow, you may go to page 317 in my article with Paul Seathouse. Teacher-induced code switching. Here, in order to provide a prompt for how to use. There are just 8 lines, again from the same school, from the same classroom. So I haven't provided the background knowledge, information is the same. Teacher, in line 1 starts with Turkish. Sorun bakalım arkadaşları da ağlamış mı? So this is expected to be a question, but not in a rising intonation. The translation is, let's ask him whether his friend cried too. In line 2, student 4 takes the turn. Arkadaşların da ağladı mı? This time he asks it in a rising intonation, like a proper question. So, did your friends cry too? And in line 3, learners all laugh. And we have a pause for half a second here. And in line 4, the teacher takes the turn in English. So here the teacher gives an instruction, task instruction. In line 5, student 4 understands the instruction, and student 4 replies in here in line 5 in English. Did you cry? And we have a pause, and then there's an unintelligible learner talk, which I couldn't transcribe here. And in line 6, teacher further gives instruction again. And in line 7, we have a pause, small pause. And in line 8, we have teachers again, she or he keeps the turn. Did your friends? So I guess here she is rephrasing the question that she wants to get from the student. So this is teacher-induced code switching in order to get a reply in English. And the analysis, which is taken from the article, in line 1, teacher uses Turkish to prompt learners to ask a specific question in English, giving the learners the design of the question she wants them to form. The teacher is thus inducing code switching. In line 2, student 4 selects himself to take the next turn and forms the required question, but in Turkish, rather than the expected English version. This indicates his misalignment with the teacher's pedagogical focus, which was to have a question in English. Student 4's choice of language provokes laughter, which shows that the other learners see his language choice, which is Turkish, as deviant behavior because of his misalignment with the pedagogical focus of the activity. So they all laugh because the teacher wants student 4 to reply or to form a question in English, but obviously he didn't. Student 4 may have used the Turkish, deliberately as a joke, because it is clear from the video recording that student 4 was also laughing. So maybe he used Turkish for a joking purpose. Because he also laughed, that means that he didn't take it as a error correction. The teacher therefore repairs student 4's language choice in line 4, and student 4 starts to form the question in English in line 5, thus affiliating or aligning affiliating to the teacher's pedagogical focus, which was to form a question in English. Student 4's use of the first language indicates misalignment with teacher's pedagogical focus, whereas his subsequent or later use of the L2 or English indicates alignment with the pedagogical focus. So my last example is from the same article on page 319, if you want to follow, extract 7. This time, teacher-initiated code switching, and the title is Dealing with Procedural Trouble. We have 8 lines here, so let me read it for you. In line 1, the teacher takes the turn not reading, so she's giving an instruction, again from the same classroom. Not reading, the teacher looks at learner 1, or student 1, I should say. And we have in line 2 a pause for 1.5 seconds, and learners talk in pairs. And in line 3 we have an arrow, and again code switch pattern. Arkadaşlar 1 dakika, okumanızı istemiyorum. Bakabilirsiniz kağıda ama okumanızı istemiyorum. Here the teacher says, hold on a minute, mates or students. I don't want you to read. You can look at the paper, but I don't want you to read it. So that's the task instruction. And we have in line 5 micro pause, and then in line 6 we have the turn of student 1. Okay, and in line 7 we have a second of pause, and in line 8 teacher is just for ideas in English, and then learners talk in pairs because they are doing the pair work activity. So this is teacher initiated code switching in order to deal with procedural trouble. Here procedural trouble means in order to run the activity or the task according to the pedagogical focus. And my analysis, in extract 7, the teacher uses code switching in lines 3 and 4 to repair procedural trouble, which means anything which prevents the institutional business from proceeding. That's the definition of procedural trouble, because the required pedagogical focus has not been established, which is to use English in pair work. The learners were reading the dialogue instead of acting it out without looking at the written script. In line 1, the teacher uses English to repair the learner's misapplication of task instructions. However, during the pause of 1.5 seconds in line 2, the learners keep talking in pairs instead of applying teacher's instruction. The teacher then code switches to Turkish to repair the procedural trouble in lines 3 and 4 because the learners were not performing what the teacher wants them to do. The pedagogical function of this code switching, that is to make sure that all the learners understand the instructions for the role play activity, is similar to that seen in extract 1. And that's why extract 1 and extract 7 are examples of teacher-initiated code switching, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So, sorry, the Siri is talking instead of me. Okay. In line 5, the teacher pauses for a very short time after the code switching. Student 1 takes a reply turn in English during the short pause, which demonstrates alignment with the teacher's pedagogical focus. Why? Because student 1 takes the turn in English in the target language. The content of the turn displays that the procedural instructions have been understood at least by student 1 or by all learners. In line 8, the teacher takes a follow-up turn in English to explain the reasons behind the task instructions. Yes, so I think that's the end of my presentation. If we go back to our original questions, maybe. So Yeah, so these are the key questions which were stated in the email. How can the sequential framework be used to analyze bilingual classroom conversations? From my sample extract analysis, my intention was to show you how analyzing the interaction between teacher and student or student and student line by line helps us to understand how bilingual conversations are designed, let me say, during talk, in reality, in real time. So the analysis of sequential framework is essential, as you know, in conversation analysis research. And second question, what kind of prosodic elements can be used as evidence of marking different categories of code switching from a CA perspective? This data was collected, maybe I should have said that before, by video cameras, more than one video cameras, and also audio recording. So I had two different vehicles to analyze the data. So I could see the faces, and also I could hear at the same time. But still I had some unintelligible talk in my pieces. I couldn't understand because the students were talking at the same time. Anyways, so I could include in my transcripts some non-linguistic information, such as learners talk at the same time or learners laugh, for example, because I could see and also hear their voices, and also some inhaling, because I could hear and see, and the other type of prosody. And I used them as evidence in order to differentiate between teacher-initiated code switching patterns and teacher-induced code switching patterns. I had the help of video recordings, let me say. So that's very important. Prosodic elements are very important because we could base our discussion on those. Yeah, so I think that's all I want to say. If you want to ask a question or make a comment, maybe.
We do have a couple of questions in the chat box.
Oh, okay,
yeah, but
see.
before we move on to that, while you were presenting, there was actually one question by Catalin, and I think it has probably been answered, but the question was, in the alternation between English and Turkish, which language is the matrix language, and what is the unmarked choice? I think it's a very, yeah, please go ahead.
Let me see the question by Catalin, yeah?
Yes, it was quite early on, yeah, in the chat.
Okay, let me read it. I saw it. In the alternation between English and Turkish, which language is the matrix language and what is the unmarked choice? Yeah, so this is EFL classrooms. So the matrix language would be English because the pedagogical aim is to use English in EFL classrooms. And unmarked choice would be to use Turkish because this would be deviant case, because this wouldn't align with the ultimate pedagogical focus.
And this also probably ties with your earlier slide that you showed about Gafaranga and Torras's paper 2002. So deviation would probably be the term used. Yeah. So,
yes, exactly.
So in CA or the organizational code switching research, I guess the terminologies are quite different from the other ones as well. So that might be also one of the things. But isn't it the case that with pedagogical focus, the marked and unmarked choices will be different as well?
Yeah, it depends on the pedagogical focus, because as I showed in my extracts, sometimes the teacher wants the students to use Turkish. For example, in order to provide the Turkish equivalence of an English word, let's say, then using Turkish at that minute, at that instance, would be an expected or preferred, let me say. We use more preferred in the analysis, preferred choice of language, let me say. So it depends, as I said, when we analyze data in CA terms, we analyze it line by line, sequence by sequence, because the interpretation of metrics language would change according to pedagogical focus.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, no detail in the conversation can be left, like the prosody or overlap and pauses, which makes it different from discourse analysis as well.
Yeah.
We have two questions from Rizwan. Should I
Okay,
read them out, or?
Would
Yeah,
it
you
be
can
possible
read,
to reflect on
and
this first before we go on to the next question?
Sorry?
Would it be possible to reflect on this before we go on to the next question?
Yes, please.
Yes.
So if we are thinking about code switching, then obviously in the classroom, the matrix language is English, and the unmarked choice for switching would be Turkish, wouldn't it? Because if we still stay with English, there is no code switching. So the unmarked choice, the expected choice, obviously, is Turkish. Now,
Catherine, as I said, it depends
yeah,
on the focus of activity, actually.
I wouldn't even say the focus of I agree with you, but I don't think it's even the focus of the activity. But there was an extract where the teacher started in Turkish and expected the student to answer in English, but the student answered in Turkish. So that would be a marked choice.
Which
because that's not,
is it?
I don't
I
remember
can
now.
show it on the screen.
I think maybe the third one.
Okay.
Extract 5, I think.
Or 5. I
Is
don't.
it 5?
It was about.
Whether the Frank Rice, yeah, this one.
This one.
Yes. So obviously the teacher says something in Turkish, and I think still expects probably the student to answer in English, and that would be the unmarked. English would be the unmarked choice, but because the student answers in Turkish, that's the unmarked. Sorry, that's the marked choice. So it's not really the not even the type of activity that is carried out, but what the purpose of the utterance is, I think, or the function of the utterances. That's one. Two, I'm not sure that it's possible.
May I give a reply for this point, Katalin?
Yes.
Then we can go on to your second point if you wish. Here in line 1, the teacher code switches to Turkish in order to give instruction, task instruction. Ask him means the partner or student, whether his friends cry too. Here, institutional goal is not to have an English question, actually. Here, the teacher wants to explain task instruction, and the teacher used Turkish. And in line 2, student 4 used Turkish Arkadaşların da ağladı mı? Did your friends cry too? Student 4 use Turkish, but student 4, if he or she aligns with the teacher's ultimate pedagogical focus to form a question in English, he misaligned. So this was not the expected reply turn, the expected language choice. And then students laugh, and also student 4 laughed. In the video, when I was analyzing it, I saw it and I said maybe student 4 made it as a joke, because he could form. In line 5, we can see that he formed the question in English. Did you cry? Not, of course, in a proper pair, but still at least he or she initiated the unmarked choice, which is preferred choice in English. So this was very interesting piece of extract, actually. That's why I included here in order to have discussion on it. And I'm very happy that you picked it up, Katalin.
Thank you. And just one more point. I'm not sure whether we can consider translation to be code switching. So if the task is to translate either from or into English, or into and from the student's L1, that we can consider to be, well, I know it's change of codes, but I don't think it is code switching in the classical sense of the word.
Yeah, your interpretation can be this. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I wish you all the best in your research, Katalin.
Thank you.
So we have questions from Rizwan, I guess. Do we have time? I'm not sure. We have time, yeah?
Yeah, we have a little time. There are other questions as well.
David asked me, could you put the email address in the chat? My email address, you mean?
Yeah, that Rizwan did.
Okay, he did already. Yeah. Okay.
Naomi,
yeah, you can use my Gmail email too. No problem. Let me see.
Okay, thank you, David. Thank you for coming. Yeah, so there's one question. Were there any observations made around, for example, facial expressions of students in the formulation of responses and teacher decisions of language use?
Very good. From Naomi Smart.
Yes.
Very smart question, Naomi. Yeah. I didn't at that time. I hadn't researched on facial expressions, but I wish I did. Yeah, I agree. That would be an excellent feedback on my analysis, or my evidence, let me say, not feedback, to my analysis. I haven't done it, but I wish I did. So I don't have, no.
And I guess multimodality became a bit more popular later on. And yeah, even before you, there was just audio. People used audio recordings, I guess.
Exactly.
There is one more question besides Rizwan's questions, which is that what are the implications of this research for teacher training? So I would actually like to tie it with how does CA, this kind of CA research about bilingual talk, be useful for researchers and teacher trainers and researchers who work with language classrooms. So why use CA, as well as the question about how is it useful for teacher education?
Well, my reply to this question is that at least in Turkey, I don't know in your countries how it differs, but in Turkey, in EFL classrooms, the teachers are expected to use English, the target language, at all times. And we train our future English teachers or teacher trainees in such fashion. So use English at all times, monolingual approach, English at all times, English policy, let's say. But in reality, because all students, most of all students, I would say, in Turkey, they are Turkish originally, and at least even if they are not Turkish, the mother tongue is that they share is Turkish. So they code switch to Turkish at some point, and that's not something harmful, but it helps students to learn English better, because they can, ask about task instructions in Turkish. In order to do a task in English, they have to know the instructions. They need to understand the instructions clearly, and they could, the teacher can explain the task instructions in Turkish. So that's not something harmful, but it helps that students reach to pedagogical or institutional aim in the end. I think that would be the main implication to use such code switching analysis research in English teacher training departments. So they can use the mother tongue or the shared language, let me say, at some times in order to help students reach the institutional aim. That would be my answer, Katilin. Do you have any other answers?
No, we have Rizwan's question, which is, what is the scope of students-induced, students-initiated code switching, etc.?
What do you mean by scope?
Yeah, I mean, thank you. I mean, so far we have seen like teacher initiating something, or teacher is inducing something so that the students speak in Turkish or something. But is there any, like, for example, like a student doing that, the reverse thing, like students speaking in Turkish or doing something in Turkish which has been accepted by the teacher as an answer or something? Does it happen in the data? Because I know some other data which happens like that, but is there anything, something in your data?
Yeah, we have such examples. I think the scope changes, as I said, when we analyze the data sequentially, and we can interpret accordingly. So yeah, I have such examples too. And Katilin made a remark on the implications. Yes, thank you. I agree totally.
Yeah, it is a valuable resource, L1, as shown in your work, in your dissertation and your article as well. Rizwan, you have a second question. Would you like to?
There is some kind of a philosophical question, like there is an emic perspective to the CA thing. So how to reconcile that emic perspective with that analysis that's coming? So there is, I think, pre or post analysis thing. So like the categorizations that's coming, like CS for providing L2 prompt, I think. So why do you situate that? I mean, your emic thing. Do you get my question?
Yeah. What I believe now, not 16 years before, but after such time, so long time, what I came to my mind, or what I have realized, is that I wish I carried out interviews with my participants then. So I recorded data, I analyzed transcripts in CA fashion, but I wish I had interviewed with the subjects. In my case, those would be the teachers. Maybe I could have interviewed with some of the students as well. And I wanted to know their reasons of using code switching, not just from English to Turkish, but Turkish to English. I wish I did. So I could have maybe shown them the data video sections or tracks, extracts, and I wanted them to, you know, give me the reasons of their language choice at that time. About 16 years ago, I wasn't in that state of mind. If I repeated this research, I would include that. Yeah, that's true. Mm-hmm.
But still, it's a fantastic article, which we all have used and based our research on. But yeah, we could all wish for redoing our research in so many different ways afterwards. So that's the case. We have a very good comment from Yvonne as well. Would you like to say something about it? Yeah, it's in the chat.
I'm completely, it starts with that, yeah? I'm completely certain about the idea of teacher-induced code switching. For example, extract 3, the teacher didn't explicitly request the student to show their understanding of the word in Turkish, but perhaps due to students' proficiency and efficiency, they just reply in Turkish. If the teacher is English only, then the student could only try their best to paraphrase. So I feel the students' replies in Turkish are recipient designed. To say it is teacher induced sounds to me a little psychological, yes, as if the teacher intends to induce the target language, when it is the student's choice to respond in either Turkish or English, unless it is stated specifically as a translation task. Yeah, perfect comment. Yeah, could be. As I said, Yvonne, if I, if I go back, if I could go back to 16 years, I would design my research differently. Yeah.
So it could be interactional incompetence.
It could be perfectly.
Other
maybe
reasons.
Lack of proficiency, or maybe lack of self-efficacy of learners.
Or personality problems, not problems, but personality, like people who are extroverts or introverts, taking initiation of the floor, and Okay, Rizwan also has a comment.
I read that because you were talking about what is that? Like interviewing the students and the teachers about the code switching things. So there comes the purist thing. So because in CA research, people those who are purists, they will say that, okay, no, like you just take the data, don't go to interview. But I guess there are some research which do kind of a mixing or kind of a using different methods together. So how would you have done that? So that would be another question for us. Like, okay, like for example, as you said something like, but can you give more detail? Like, okay, I would have done this to mix the method with CA, because when you'll be doing the interview, then it wouldn't be beyond CA, right? It will be something else, but it will be mixing, like taking their comments, or so how to reconcile that thing, how to build that thing. We want to do it right now for ourselves. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Well, I feel that necessity right now, in order to that I wish to have some interviews with my participants, because at the time I was collecting this data, I was completely an outsider. I wasn't working at that institution. I just went there to collect data with video recording and audio recording. I didn't know the teachers before at all. So all participants were new to me. So I just analyzed according to transcripts and what I see on the video recordings, what I hear from the audio recordings, and that's the proper CA analysis anyway. But personally, in depth, I would like to know, beyond my analysis, what I see on transcripts. I wish I knew why they did so. Maybe if I knew the teachers beforehand, I would analyze in a different way. I don't know. But everyone was new to me. The context was, that school was new to me. As I said, I was an outsider completely. I came from England to collect data. You know, nobody knew me at that time. And then, personally, I wish I knew in more depth, because each person is different. You know, they maybe because of their lack of proficiency or self-efficacy, as Alia said, different personalities, or even in that time, their mood was, you know, not positive, maybe. Yeah.
So ethnographic knowledge, some sort of Naomi is going as well. Ethnographic knowledge about the participants, or different tools to know the participants beyond the classroom, can help the researcher, I guess, beyond the analysis bits, to say fully about what the situation could be in a particular context. But obviously CA does provide a very zoomed in on analysis in depth and in detail. But beyond that, we also need sometimes some other tools. And I know that some people have some similar research where they have put the classroom interaction in front of the teachers and then ask them to comment on it as well, which could be one way, but I'm not sure how that works as well. Yeah, Rizwan has a hand raised.
On the same issue, then, I mean, if we think article-wise, I mean, how to publishing that data in articles. So, like, for example, it can be like one article on purely CA things, CA stuff. Like if I do, okay, analyzing the CA data and then in next article, if we do something like that interview, which has been analyzed or something, that is okay or something. Or I'm just brainstorming. I mean, the ideas, like how to incorporate this kind of stuff into beyond CA thing, or how it can be done actually.
I think Rizwan, philosophically, they are both very different. You know, emic perspective, CA's emic perspective, and discourse analysis or interviews ethic perspective. They are very different, yes. But how to combine them? Maybe we will have another model of doing so in the future, hopefully in the near future. But what I feel right now at this age, after 16 years, is that ethic perspective is lacking. Yeah. But I'm still very happy to use CA methodology in analyzing such classroom interaction. At least I didn't do any quantification, you know, it's like mission type of analyzing something. Again, as I said earlier, by line analysis, I could go in depth in interaction still by using CA methodology, but as on my personal side, I would like to hear the thoughts, feelings of the participants, which I don't know right now.
Okay, thank you.
You're
that was a
welcome.
very good answer and thought-provoking at the same time. So I'm still processing what you are saying and what kind of discussion we are having. So we are almost near the end. If there are any comments or any questions from the other participants, we'd like to know about that.
Alia, may I request something from
Yes,
you?
please.
as the host of this session, because as I was talking during the presentation, I couldn't read the comments and the questions. Can you just copy the chat window and send me an email of that?
Yes,
I want
please,
to.
I can.
I want to keep a record because there are, as far as I can see, there are very good comments by Naomi and Yvonne and Rizwan, and also David. He left earlier, I guess, but yeah. Yeah, he said he needs to leave now. And also Kübra made a comment. So if you can just copy and paste on a Word doc maybe, or somewhere else, and send me as an email. I think this presentation was good to all, thought-provoking, and I remind my early days. I wouldn't say as mistakes, but my small steps, I would say, I would name in the field. There are still new paths to discover. So you researchers, Yvonne and Katalin, and new PhD candidates, you may, introduce us with new paths in doing CA and in doing CA code-switching research.
So at that point, you were trying to stand on the shoulders of giants. And now you are lending the hand to others to.
Yes,
yeah.
I'm very happy to be able to lend my hand to newcomers. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your, comments and criticism, or even questions. And thank you.
Thank you. This session actually has led us, at least me, to have more sessions only with you as well, maybe in the future, Eda, but others as well, discussion sessions. It has been very fruitful, and I believe Rizwan is also nodding and happy that we've had a good discussion, and we'll go back and read this again. I had to revisit my PhD days as well, when I was reading your dissertation frantically. When I found one from Newcastle, I was like, whoa. And then I even read my own notes, like why CA? One of the comments was why CA? So this was really good to clear my own thoughts. And also I would like to say that code switching and bilingual talk is like that elephant, which we're all trying to touch from different angles, organizational researchers and grammatical and others. And we're all feeling different things. And probably for teacher education, we all need to combine those thoughts. But obviously we need to zoom in on with the magnifying glass as well to see where the things are going. So this is what I would like to end this seminar with. And thank you, everyone. It has been a pleasure to meet you all. And thank you very much, Eda.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy New Year to all. So see you in next year.
Happy New Year, yes. And happy holidays. Yes. So we'll come back refreshed again with new thoughts and refreshed mind.
Okay. Happy to be here. Thanks for participation.
Thank you.
Yeah. So bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.